Nissan's luxury division Infiniti is certainly no stranger to the large body-on-frame three-row luxury SUV. The company has been playing in this space with the original QX56 for about 20 years. And while the QX56 was renamed to the QX80 about a decade ago, the QX80 has always kind of lived in the shadow in terms of sales of a lot of its main competitors. Now for 2025, Infiniti is saying you're going to be experiencing a huge product renaissance, and it starts with the introduction of this vehicle. This is the all-new, fully redesigned 2025 QX80. It rides on an all-new platform. It has a brand new twin turbocharged V6 under the hood, and it finally has an interior that has modern tech features that can go toe-to-toe with the best from Cadillac, Lincoln, and even Jeep. So today we're actually out here in beautiful Napa, California to finally get behind the wheel of the all-new QX80, and the big question I want to answer, for those of you who are looking for a Japanese body-on-frame three-row large luxury SUV, has Infiniti finally managed to create a competitor that can be considered among the best in the segment? Stay tuned to find out. So it's been about 15 years since Infiniti first gave us an all-new version of the QX80. That's how old the previous second generation was. So before we start talking about the new styling of this third generation, I thought I'd pop the hood and show you guys what's powering this thing. Now, one of the unique aspects about the old QX80 was the fact that it was one of the last Japanese body-on-frame SUVs that still had a naturally aspirated V8. That has been replaced, of course, with a modern twin turbocharged V6. Now underneath this hood, you're going to find an engine that is new to the QX80. However, it's not entirely an all-new design because it's essentially a bored and stroked version of the 3-liter twin-turbo V6 that you also find under the hood of the Q50 and, of course, the Nissan Z. This is now a 3.5-liter gasoline direct injection twin-turbocharged V6. So it's basically part of their VR35DDTT engine family. And in this particular application, this engine now makes 450 horsepower and 516 pound-feet of torque. That's about 50 more horsepower and about 103 more foot-pounds of torque versus the old naturally aspirated 5.6-liter V8. It all goes out through a 9-speed automatic transmission that has 2 more gears versus the old QX80. This vehicle is available with either rear-wheel drive or the company's multi-mode or all-mode all-wheel drive system with a 1-speed transfer case. So there's no more low-range gearing available on the QX80. I believe Nissan is saving that, of course, for the next generation Armada, which we should be seeing either by the end of this year or early next year. Now, of course, by it downsizing to a twin-turbo V6, fuel economy has improved by about 13%. Infiniti says the 2-wheel drive versions will get 16 in the city, 20 on the highway. Premium is recommended for max performance. This all-wheel drive version that we're showing you here is rated at 15, 19, and 17 combined. That's around a 2 mpg improvement in the combined rating versus the old V8. This vehicle has around a 24-gallon fuel tank. You're looking at around 400 miles of range on a full tank. Infiniti doesn't quote a 0 to 60 time. I got just under 6 seconds for the old V8 when I tested it earlier this year. I don't have a top speed figure. I estimate it's around the 130 mile per hour mark. And in terms of towing, this is still a body on frame truck-based SUV. It'll tow a maximum of 8,500 pounds. And Infiniti wasn't ready to talk about the curb weight, but they did say that this new frame and the lighter engine has resulted in a weight reduction. So the old QX80 was just under 6,000 pounds. I'd say this model is probably going to be around the 5,700 pound rating once Infiniti gives us that final number. But let's go ahead and close up this hood and talk about the exterior styling. Now, this color that I'm showing you here is a new color this year. It's called Dynamic Metal. It's essentially the hero color that they first revealed the car in about 3 months ago at the New York Auto Show. And you can see the design of this vehicle is kind of starting a new design language for Infiniti. They're calling it artistry in motion. And it's definitely very, very unique. It's very upscale. You can see the grille, the bold double arch grille of this vehicle has been enlarged. It has a new 3-dimensional effect to the Infiniti logo that also lights up at night. It's an illuminated logo. It's standard on every version. And then you can see in terms of the headlights, you can see it has kind of a new trendy design here where you have the different lighting elements for the LED headlights to the LED turn signals. You can see this is supposed to resemble like a piano keyboard, and then this is supposed to remind you of like a bamboo forest here. And overall, I think it's definitely a very attractive design. These headlights you can see here, you have LED low and high beams. You have this functional vent over here that creates an air curtain over the wheels, all for aerodynamics. Infiniti says you have a 0.37 coefficient of drag with this model, and you can see here this is a modern car, so you have the sensor there for the Pro Pilot Assist 2.1. You have you have the well-integrated parking sensors. The front fascia of the car, I personally think it looks really good, although there are some times where I look at this car and it kind of reminds me of like a Hyundai Palisade or a Jeep. A lot of vehicles are using this design language here with the divorced headlight design. And overall, you can see the vehicle definitely has an imposing look. I mean, being built on an all-new frame, which Infiniti says has improved the torsional rigidity by as much as 25%, I think as much as 57% for the lateral rigidity. In terms of the overall length, you have still the same 121-inch long wheelbase. Its overall length is now 211.2. It's about an inch longer, and the vehicle itself is 83.3 inches wide. So it's around 3.5 inches wider than the previous generation. That's going to give us a lot more interior space. You can see this particular trim that I'm showing you is the top of the line Autograph. It's a new trim this year. It's riding on a unique set of 22-inch multi-spoke wheels with a multi-spoke design with a twin color look to it. You have a 13.8-inch brake rotor with twin piston calipers in the front, a single piston floating at the rear. You have an all-new suspension setup where this model here also has their dynamic digital suspension and adaptive four-corner air suspension. So in its lowest setting, this vehicle has roughly just under 8 inches of ground clearance, but you can jack it up to have around 10 inches of ground clearance in its off-road setting. You can see I really appreciate how it's got kind of like a full paint finish. The wheels are 22 inches, like I said earlier. The low pure trim will have a 20-inch wheel. It's riding on a 275 by 50 R22 Bridgestone Alenza all-season tire. You can see this styling element here is an actual functional hood or vent that allows for cooling for the engine. You can see the Autograph trim is the only trim that gives you the blacked out side mirrors, I believe, with the two-tone roof combination. So you can see it's got the obsidian black with the dynamic metal, which looks really nice. You have these roof rails up top here, which are aerodynamic and they're standard. And then every version of the QX80 will have the panoramic glass sunroof, which is nice. You couldn't even get that feature on the previous generation. And you can see here, there's also these new pop-out door handles, although you can see it's not like a digital latch system, but that door handle will retract in and out whenever the vehicle is locked or unlocked. I'm surprised to see that there's no power retractable running boards, but the running boards that you're seeing there is going to be standard equipment. And if you guys like the two-tone roof, you have to go for the Autograph trim. This is the only trim that gives you the two-tone roof design. And then backing away from the vehicle, you can see it still has the classic silhouette of a QX80. And in terms of the overall length, this is around 10 inches longer than the Lexus LX, but it's a smidge shorter versus the Cadillac Escalade, but longer versus like the Toyota Sequoia as well. So this is a nice size vehicle, but there is no longer wheelbase version of this car. Now you can see the Autograph badge here will let everybody know that you have the highest version of the QX80. I also appreciate the floating roof design here that you also get with the two-tone roof. Remember, this is the only trim to get the black painted roof. All the other ones will have a full paint finish. And then looking at the rear, you can see the LED taillights kind of remind us a little bit of the QX60. So you can see you have this full-length LED light blade or light bar that is made up of 300 different individual LEDs. It spells out Infiniti boldly at the back here, and you can see there's some new badging here for QX80. That four-wheel drive badge is definitely an interesting look. I actually wasn't able to tell what it was when I first saw it. I also really like the bigger rear spoiler back here. You have a camera style for the digital rear view mirror, and then the rear wiper is kind of nicely tucked away underneath the rear spoiler, which is a nice touch. And then down here you can see a lot of brands are moving away from the actual visible exhaust tips. Infiniti's doing the same thing here. No hybrid option. Again, you only have that twin turbo V6. Now looking at the cargo area, you can see this is where Infiniti was able to kind of repurpose the interior with the new frame and give us more interior space. So in terms of the cargo area back here, Infiniti says there's almost 30% more cargo room when you are looking at the space behind the third row. You have around 22 cubic feet of storage space. That's up versus 16 in the previous generation, which I really appreciate. You can see underneath the floor here, there's a little bit of underfloor storage. And then in typical, there's also these power folding rear seat areas where if you push these buttons over here, you can see that actually will power fold the third row. If you fold down this third row back here, it actually expands the cargo to around 59 cubic feet. That's an increase of around 17%. And then Infiniti says if you want to fold down the second row as well, which as you can see is done by just pushing that button over here. There's something in the seat right now, that's why it's not letting me fold it. That increases the cargo capacity to 101 cubic feet. Now that is pretty high in the class for space. That's considerably more versus what you get in the Lexus LX. But if you're looking at like the Cadillac Escalade, the Escalade offers around 20 more cubic feet of max cargo space. But you can see here, with this much space, over 100 cubic feet, you're easily going to be able to use this vehicle to move a lot of longer items. And it's also nice with the fact that the floor is almost completely flat when you fold down everything, and it also has the power fold feature, which just makes it really easy to actually fold down all the seats. So on the outside, the exterior styling of the new QX80 may seem a little more evolutionary, but the interior is where Infiniti really spent the big bucks. Before we get inside, however, let me show you guys the key fob. As you can see, at long last, Infiniti has a new key fob. It's kind of similar to the new fob we've seen in some other newer Nissan products, but it has its own unique look to it. You can see it says Infiniti on the front, Infiniti on the rear. It's a nice size key that feels good in your hands. You have your usual buttons for lock, unlock, power liftgate, panic, and remote start, which is also obviously a really nice touch. And I really appreciate the fact that Infiniti actually did give this vehicle a new key. Now, as you can see, approaching the vehicle, there's a pop in and out door handle. So when the vehicle is locked, like it is right now, the door handles will retract back into the actual slot, but for some reason, as you can see, it's not doing so. It probably will do so as you kind of walk away from the vehicle. As I touch the back of that handle, you can see the door handle will also unlock the door. The mirrors will fold in. The one thing I'm surprised to see, however, is the fact that the running boards are not power deploying. That's something that a lot of competitors have. And while I do appreciate the fact that running boards are standard on this vehicle, I think it would have really just kind of cleaned up the look when the vehicle's doors are closed. So I think that's a silly omission. Now, my particular test car has the basically hero color. It's the dynamic metal exterior with the burgundy semi-aniline full leather interior. This interior color combination is unique to the autograph trim. If you guys want, the autograph trim, your choices are either black or this kind of burgundy red. Step down to the sensory, there's like a saddle tan and a black. And there's also a beige. There's also a tailor fit material that's standard on the Pure. That's the fake leather material. The sensory in this trim will come with the semi-aniline. The luxury will have just a leather material. And it definitely makes a great first impression. Now, looking at the rest of the door panel, you can see it's their flagship vehicle, so there's a lot of nice upscale materials. There's a beautiful leather stitch area here on the upper portion with the same burgundy red leather. This dark open pore oak wood has these really cool metal inlays in them that just looks really expensive, looks really high quality. Love the metal accents that you see here. There's two-person memory seats, nice and padded center or armrest over here. Window controls, they're one touch for all four. These are essentially the same switches that you find in a lot of other newer Nissan products. And then every version of the QX80 will come with the Klipsch audio system. But if you guys want the reference Premier version with 24 speakers, you have to go for the upper trims. You can see the speakers themselves are metal covered on the door panels. There's like 3 of them just in the door panels in general. And then down here, it's even soft touch injection molded plastic. Hard touch areas over here. There's a little bit of storage. If you guys are an audiophile, I had a chance to listen to the audio system during their demo. It sounds absolutely fantastic, but it's really kind of up there with the rest of the vehicles in this segment. Now you can see the seats, they adjust in 14 different ways. They are heated, ventilated, and massaging. You can see there's actual buttons here on the usual location to adjust the seat controls. There's 4-way lumbar. There's also an ability to kind of squeeze the bolstering here on the sides, and then that activates the massage feature. The seats are covered in plush leather. I also love the speaker that goes around the entire head restraint here. This basically allows you to kind of hear GPS, hear a phone call with the music still on if you guys have people in the vehicle, which is again a really great feature to have. I also noticed the carpet is very plush over here. It's a kind of a unique carpeted floor mat that you get with the autograph trim. And then getting in here, you can see the air suspension is kind of in its lowered setting. It's automatically does that. So getting inside, it's a really easy step in height. And then when you go to close the door, the door has a nice solid sounding thunk. Now, one thing this car is missing is soft closed doors. So I kind of wish that Infiniti included that, especially at this price point. Now, starting the vehicle up, you can see the start stop button is located here. And then it's not a hybrid or a mild hybrid. So the vehicle kind of just fires to life like you'd expect it to be. And as you can see, what makes a really great first impression when you get in here are the dual 14.3-inch displays. So this is the latest version of the Infiniti InTouch infotainment system. And the displays kind of form together to create one large display that's probably a little over 28 inches across. You can see you finally have a fully digital instrument cluster here, which is nice. You have a brand new 2-spoke steering wheel design. The sensory and autograph trims have an upgraded premium leather that feels really high quality. Love the contrast stitching. I love the Infiniti logo here in the actual rim of the steering wheel. You can see you have paddles behind the wheel which feel a little bit plasticky, which I don't love. You can see there are some touch sensitive buttons here, stitching along the airbag cover, the new 3-dimensional Infiniti logo, really cool aluminum trim here with this kind of textured design. And then the steering wheel itself has a power tilt telescoping adjustment. That's actually standard, I believe, on every version of the QX80. You can see their ProPilot 2.1 is going to be standard on this trim, optional on other trims. It basically allows for hands-free driving. We'll see if we can talk about that during the driving portion later on. And then you can see over here, there's this beautiful leather stitching across the entire dash, which is great. You have some piano black accents with some more of that wood, the dark ash wood with the metal inlays, and combining with, of course, the piano black here and the leather that goes across the entire dash. There's also a heads-up display, which is really nice. And then if you want to control some of these controls, Infiniti essentially has really improved their infotainment system. So this system has Google built in. As you can see, my phone is connected via the Apple CarPlay. Huge improvement versus the old model, which only took up like this portion of the screen. It's wireless, as you can see. It includes wireless over-the-air updates. I also love this kind of background. This is the live view background where you can kind of go in and you can change it to have 3 different style backgrounds. You can go do that from here, going to the display, going to the display over here, and then you can go to a background theme. The live view actually changes based on the time of day. There's also a horizon view, which you can see changes the color. And then there's the standard view if you guys prefer just a black look to that, which I'm looking forward to spending a little more time with this to be able to show you guys, what this system is like. Going back over here to this little display, there is the ability to kind of customize this. Now you can basically adjust either one of these screens from the steering wheel. So you can basically push this button here. This will take you to, change the view over here, which this wheel I have to say is weird because it's diagonal. That's something that it's going to take me a little time to get used to. You can see there's the dynamic look of the instrument panel. You can go to an elegant look, which has 2 traditional dials, which I actually really appreciate that. And then if you want to go to an enhanced view, the enhanced view actually kind of gets rid of the traditional dials, and you can kind of go scroll here and you can actually put the GPS function in the actual display over here. So this is the embedded Google navigation system, which I actually really love. It looks fantastic. You can see if I go over here, there's the embedded GPS where it has basically Google Maps. It also has Google built in. So I can say something like, "Hey Google." Now, unfortunately, when my phone is connected to the CarPlay, it actually will stop my recording at the same time, so I won't be able to show you guys that, which is weird because I've been able to do that in other systems that also have Google built in with my phone connected via CarPlay, but for some reason, this car will actually pause the recording, so I apologize to my editor, Rob, in advance, because he's going to have to do this in separate clips. But as you can see, the Google Maps looks fantastic, the Apple CarPlay looks fantastic, and overall, the system in general is, slightly different versus what we've seen in other Infiniti and Nissan products, and this is exactly what they needed because the old infotainment system was just so dated that it just felt like it was from a century ago. Now you can see here the massaging seats are controlled via on the screen, or there's also a separate button located right here, and you can see there's 3 different types of massage. You just turn it on from here, and there's choosing from 3 different intensities. There's a refreshing, a lumbar, and a relaxing. My personal favorite is the refreshing. I think it looks fantastic. There's also a 64 multiple color ambient lighting in this vehicle, which you can adjust by kind of going into the vehicles here. You can kind of go into your interior light setting. You can go to colored ambient, and you can see there's all these different types of themes where if you go into the different themes, you can choose the interior lighting color. My personal favorite is going to be either like a purple, blue, or green, but this is the first time Infiniti is doing an ambient lighting where it's kind of personalized and customizable. And I think that's something that they've been needing very, very badly. Now, in terms of the technology, there's also a couple of world first here. So there's like a new ultra wide vision front camera system. So when I push the camera button here, you can see that gives you a full front view or full top-down 360 view. If I push this button here, I can go to an ultra wide view. But then check this out, guys. I can also push this button here, and it actually expands the screen into the center here in the instrument panel. That is actually impressive. I have never seen anything like that before in any other vehicle. and it really helps to minimize the blind spots of this vehicle. If you're trying to kind of cross an intersection, this is really going to help you see what's around or what's in front of you. Perhaps there's like a bicyclist or a pedestrian or a child hiding in front of you there. If you go to the 3D view over here, you can see this vehicle allows you to kind of do a full 360 perimeter scan, which is nice. I don't love how the car is not the same color. You can actually see there's Jared from CarBuzz. You can actually see him pretty clearly there in the screen. So Infiniti was one of the first brands to do a full 360 camera, and it's finally great to see them upgrading the technology so it's finally up to par with so many other competing systems. If you just put the vehicle into reverse, you can see there's where it gives you the full top-down 360 camera. It has moving object detection, which is cross-traffic braking, front and rear as well. The graphics and resolution, like I said earlier, are just really up there in terms of, what you find in the segment. Now there's a separate 9-inch display over here that allows you to adjust the climate control functions. You can see it's got tri-zone climate control, heated and cooled seats. You can also adjust the rear climate from over here, and you can also turn on the heated and cooled seats from the second row from over here while locking them out. So that's kind of really a cool feature. The mode selector over here allows you to go into your different drive modes. There's the 4-wheel drive system. Again, no low range in this vehicle. It just has an automatic setting and a 4-high. Stability control is there, and then you can also push that button. That will allow you to kind of move the air suspension up and down. There's also different drive modes here. Sport, for example, is what we'll try out when we do a 0 to 60. It doesn't actually change the way that looks there, which I kind of wish it did for the instrument panel. But again, I appreciate how, there's another touchscreen here to control the climate. Now, the transmission controls are down here via this little buttons. These buttons, 4 buttons. I don't particularly love it. It requires you to look down when you're changing gears. And I imagine if you own this vehicle, you You'll kind of get used to it. That separate button there will allow you to raise and lower the air suspension. And then you can see here the center console area. When you open this up, there's a wireless phone charging pad here, 2 USB charging ports. There's a total of 8 USB charging ports in this vehicle. And then your cup holders over here, nice padded leather throughout the entire center console. There's also a nice little storage area here, which is really great. And then if you open this up, you can see there's a nice cool box over here, which allows you to keep your drinks cool. That's included when you guys go for the autograph trim. It's not available in any other trims. There's also a nice little storage area here where you could put like the key, for example. And then like I mentioned earlier, the seats are really comfortable and supportive. Love the semi-aniline leather. The massage works well. And I love the fact that the bolstering will actually hug you in place if you really need it to. Now looking at the glove compartment, you can see it's damped and it's lined with felt. It's a nice bin style. It offers a ton of space over there. And then over here you can see there's also like a camera that allows you to basically take selfies in the vehicle and also use a function as a dash cam, which is great. A lot of people are looking for those features in the aftermarket. I love the fact that Infiniti gives it to you, from the factory. There's a digital camera rear mirror that's included when you go for the sensory trim and up. I also love the material here, which is an Alcantara suede on the headliner. You can see the panoramic sunroof is, it opens up. It's standard. It goes over the second row. If you want to open it up, it actually opens inward, as you can see, and it opens up a pretty large amount. So if I want, I can actually open it up entirely, and it gives me even more, light and air and venting into the actual passenger area, which is a great touch. There's also a retractable shade, power shade, which is again important for those of you who don't want to, be baking in the sun. And overall, the interior just has a really high quality look and feel to it. It finally feels modern. It feels sophisticated. It feels ultra luxurious. There's a couple of, switchgear buttons in here that remind me too much of a Nissan. I just really wish the car had soft closed doors, for example, but overall I'm pretty impressed, and it's about time that Infiniti gives us an interior that can go toe-to-toe with the best from Cadillac, Lincoln, and of course Lexus. Now moving to the back seat of the QX80, as you can see, the rear doors, they open up a pretty large amount. And this is great if you guys need to actually fit a child seat back here. And you can see the autograph trim, like on my test car, comes standard with these captain's chairs. Now, if you guys want a bench seat, you can get it on the other trims of the QX80. It's a no-cost option, I believe. But with the captain's chairs, you can see this does limit the seating capacity to 7. You essentially have the same really plush seats that you get from the front into the second row. These seats are also heated, ventilated, and massaging. That's exclusive to the autograph trim. If you go for the sensory trim, you won't have the massage function in the second row, but you do still get the semi-aniline leather. This feels really plush. I also love the fact that these seats are also power recline and adjustable for moving the seat forward and back, so that's a nice upscale touch. You can see on the door panel back here, it's all the same nice materials, beautiful stitched leather, more of that wood with the metal inlays, more metal speaker covers, padded area here. It's even padded down here with more storage. The one thing this car, however, is missing are retractable shades. I think that's a really inexcusable omission, especially at this price point. Some vehicles in the class don't offer it. The Cadillac Escalade doesn't, but it seems like a really silly omission that Infiniti, I'm hoping, will add at some point. You can see there's a nice grab handle here. And as I pull myself in, you can see legroom space back here is pretty impressive. Infiniti says there's 39.2 inches of legroom, which is nice. You can see there's a flat floor over here. You have your own set of climate control functions. You can see over here on the seat back, it's covered in more leather. You have storage cubbies over here, which is nice. And then at 5'7", you can see there's plenty of legroom for me to stretch out. I can also move the seat forward and back if I need to. This is with it all the way back, so you get the full legroom amount. And then in terms of headroom space, you can see the sunroof does eat into the headroom space a little bit, but this is still, very comfortable for somebody like my height. Now you can see you have heated and cooled seats. Like I said, there's a separate button here if you guys would like to use the button. There's also cup holders here when you open this up, more leather and stitching. You can see, open that up, there's also a nice little storage area with 2 USB-C charging ports. And then the autograph trim also gives you an actual screen back here. So this is where you can access the climate function. If you want through the screen, you can also adjust the seats on the heated and ventilated seat controls. And then over here, this is where you can go into the massage function here and turn on your massage between basically the same type of massage that you get from the front seat area. And again, this is only included on the autograph trim. The other trims aren't going to give you the massaging function in the second row, so that's something to kind of keep in mind. The center console here, like I mentioned, had pretty good amount of storage. There's no armrest that folds down here, but you do have the armrest over here. And then when you want to get into the third row, obviously with the console here, Infiniti does make it, relatively easy. So you can see, getting back into the third row, you basically access it by pushing a button right here, and you can see if I push and hold that button, the seat will kind of move itself forward electronically. exactly. And also you're probably noticing the way the seat moves forward. This basically would allow you to keep a child seat anchored here, although as you can see, the space gets kind of tight. I did notice that if the system sensed that there was something blocking here, it would actually reverse back and go back into position. This is kind of where I appreciate a manual system, because the electronic ones can kind of be annoying and finicky at times when you're kind of trying to deal with that. Now, in terms of the third row, you can see it does fit 3 people across. I do have this one here folded down. You can actually fold it up by simply pushing this button over here and holding it. There's also a separate button back here, but you can see if I push that button and hold that, it allows me to put the third row back up. And this is where Infiniti, again, really wanted to make some upgrades here. So in terms of the legroom space, you can see that's with the seat all the way back. If I slide over into this position here, Infiniti says there's around 32 or 33 inches of legroom back here. That's around 5 more inches versus the previous generation. That's a big upgrade. It's not quite as much as what you're gonna get in the Escalade, which has around 35 inches of legroom. The Jeep also has around 36 inches of legroom. Same thing with the Lincoln Navigator. But you can see the vehicle being 3 inches wider this year. You do have room to fit 3 people across. There's also these headrests that obviously adjust, and then you can see there's a USB-C charging port. You do have a recline function here, which is power, and then you also have heated third row seats. That's included when you go for the autograph trim. There's also cup holders, and it's hard touch plastic here, but I do appreciate the positioning of the window back here. It basically allows you to kind of see outside the vehicle. There's also a little bit of storage over here, which is nice. Your rear air conditioning vents are here. Same thing for the second row area. And then if I wanted to recline this up a little bit, you can see sitting upright. The headroom space is a little bit tight. This is where I feel like some competitors have a little bit more headroom, but as you can see, compared to something like the Lexus LX, this is just a huge improvement. So if you guys are looking to buy, a 3-row body-on-frame Japanese SUV, this is kind of where I wish the direction Lexus had gone with the LX. But it's really great to see Infiniti, basically giving you the kind of space that you expect, in this particular segment, and really taking on what the big 3 from GM and of course Stellantis and Ford offer with their, large body-on-frame SUVs. So here we are finally behind the wheel of the all-new Infiniti QX80, and I'm joined by my good friend Jared from Car Buzz. If you guys haven't seen his TikToks, he does some of the best TikToks out there. In fact, I go to him for inspiration whenever I do TikTok videos. But you know what, Jared? I want to test out the 0 to 60 really quick. We found a nice straight road, and the last time I did a QX80, it was the V8. I got 5.9 seconds. So 5.9. I'm hopeful that we can get a better time here. So we're in sport mode. Traction control is off. We'll brake torque it. There we go. All right. Sounds good. Does sound good. 6.5. Yeah, 6.52. Now, we actually had a chance to do a run when Jared was driving earlier, and it also got 6.52. That's on a pretty level road, so I have to say I am a little disappointed because the V8 was a half a second faster. Now, I'll have to wait until I get one back home to retest that, obviously, and see if we can do, in the same kind of testing conditions. But I have to admit, the engine, this is essentially, it's a new engine, but it's also kind of an updated version of the VR30 DDTT that we've seen in something like the Q50, the Nissan Z. In this engine, in this vehicle, it's been bored out to be 3.5 liters, 450 horsepower, 516 pound-feet of torque. Those are really nice numbers. Actually, this car is more powerful versus the Lincoln Navigator. It's more powerful versus the Cadillac Escalade, more powerful versus the Lexus LX. So I think Infiniti did a really good job with the powertrain. It also is paired up with a new 9-speed automatic, which when you put your foot down, this engine makes a really good sound.
Sounds like a Z.
It actually does. So there's a fake sound that's being pumped in through the exhaust, which I don't mind fake noises as long as it sounds good. I always tell people in my videos, like, if you're gonna do a fake sound, it just needs to sound good. So I think Infiniti did a great job. I mean, obviously, if you guys are keen on, or you are really attached to the V8 sound, it's not going to replace it, but I think that it's a viable option. And I also appreciate the fact that it's not like electric, it's not like a hybrid, it's just a traditional gas V6 with a 9-speed auto. And I think this car, has enough power that's going to satisfy, most people when they're looking in this particular space. But, this is a big luxury SUV, Jared. And what did they talk about during the presentation? They said that they've made this thing a lot more refined, it's a lot more modern, and it also feels smaller than it is. Now, you had a chance to drive it. What do you think about that?
I don't think that they're lying. Now, they went a little far as to say that this is supposed to remind you of the old FX
That's right,
37, the QX70 that became as well. I wouldn't go that far, but it definitely immediately doesn't drive like a big full-size body-on-frame truck. It does feel a little smaller than that.
Right, so this is the autograph that we're driving. So we have the dynamic digital suspension, we have the adaptive four-corner air suspension, which is the first time this car has an air suspension at all four corners. Yeah, because the old one, you said in your video, was only rear air suspension for load leveling. So it definitely makes this truck, I mean, feel a lot smaller than it is. It's still a body-on-frame construction. It does have an all-independent suspension. It's had that for a while now. And even in sport mode here, we're on these 22-inch wheels on a 275 width tire. It has a really good ride quality.
Rides really nice.
Yeah, and that's what you want. You don't want this thing to, you know, ride like a truck. I mean, obviously, it's never going to, you're never going to forget that it's a body-on-frame vehicle. But at the same time, I wouldn't say this is like, a back road canyon carving beast. But at the same time, it feels a lot better than, the last Cadillac Escalade that I drove. Because recently, I just had the Escalade V. You also recently had that. The Escalade V.
Big.
Oh yeah, it feels big. It's bonkers, batshit crazy. But at the same time, you never, forget how big and wide and heavy the Escalade V is. Same thing with the Wagoneer. The Grand Wagoneer is also an excellent option, but that thing also feels massively huge. This to me feels more akin to like a Lexus LX. Obviously it's a bigger vehicle than the LX, but I really appreciate how Infiniti has made this thing feel a lot more refined, a lot more car-like, and a lot more modern, because we finally have features like an electronic steering system, power steering system. Before, the old hydraulic system was never really a fan. You said
super heavy, super vague.
Yeah, no, it was really imprecise as well. Like you turn the wheel and the car like wouldn't really change directions. It'd have a completely numb and devoid of feel, which in this class it doesn't really matter, but I have to say, like, now you can see it changes directions much faster. It just feels a lot more precise, and it just instills a lot more confidence when you're driving, especially when you're driving a huge vehicle like this. You want this kind of car to feel nimble or smaller than it is, because we are piloting a car that's like 211 inches long. I mean, obviously it's not as long as like an Escalade. Right. An Escalade's a little bit longer, and Infiniti doesn't do like a longer version of this car. There are a couple of other cool tech features as well. Now, first of all, you guys are seeing the big 14.3-inch displays. There's also like a camera view button here. If you push that camera view, although I think you have to be going a little bit slower speeds. Infiniti actually had like a little demonstration for us. There's nobody behind us. I want to see if I can get it to pop up. Here we go. Again. So the camera view actually gives you this really neat function where you can actually do a wide view. Now,
I think it's this one?
Yeah, the ultra wide view. So
and then you can expand it.
Yeah, you can expand it to take up the entire, like, both displays, which I think is really cool. Now that view is great. You can see at around 14 miles an hour, it did shut off. That view is actually great if you're trying to, like, for example, come out of an intersection here and there's a vehicle parked on the road and you can't see around it. There could be like somebody standing beside the vehicle, or like a bicyclist or a bike sitting there. That was actually great in just seeing around things and just kind of giving you, what's in your field of view that you can't see around like actual objects. So I think that's great technology.
And this fixes the big issue that all of these full-size SUVs have, that the hoods have become so high. That viral picture went out that you could have kids sitting, crisscross, like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 kids in front of the car. You don't see them because the hood is so tall. This gives you that invisible hood view that you can kind of see across the hood. It's great if you're a mom or dad that's never had a vehicle this big before and you're just getting in it. It's overwhelming sometimes to drive a vehicle this big if you're coming from, a smaller 3-row crossover or a 2-row crossover into something like this. That makes driving it so much easier. Parking in a garage, same thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think Infiniti has done a great job there, because if you remember the old QX80, the technology was so dated.
So dated.
I mean, it came out in 2009 as like a 2010 model, and it looked every bit as old as it was. I mean, the screen resolution was really crappy. You had like a 12.3-inch display, which they updated, I think,
in 2021.
In 2021, but then the graphics still look like they came out of 2008.
Right. The 360 camera still had like dividing lines and stuff like that, similar to what you'd get on like a Sentra, which is so much less expensive.
Right. but in terms of everything else, so we're sitting here on a more smoother piece of pavement. I'm going to actually switch the drive mode here to just standard. This is actually a little haptic screen here as well. The suspension gets a little bit softer, the steering gets a little bit lighter, and I also really appreciate the seats in this car. These are the semi-aniline burgundy seats. I'm sitting here getting a massage as well. They're heated and ventilated. You also have massaging seats in the second row. I mean, this is a feature that you can't even get in the Lexus LX, at least not in the front seat area. It's only in the back seat if you go for like the ultra luxury trim,
which is like 130,000.
Right. I mean, you can get a massaging seat in like the Navigator and the Escalade as well, but again, you know, when you're spending this kind of money, you kind of expect those kind of upscale luxury touches.
The Escalade does not have massaging rear seats. The Navigator does. The Escalade only has heated rear seats.
Correct.
So this has heated, ventilated, and massage. So in terms of like all-out luxury, we don't know what Escalade is going to have for 2025. They might add those features, but right now, this technically has like a few features that the Escalade does not have, which is kind of nice.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate Infiniti was kind of looking at their competitive set. They were like, okay, what can we do to kind of elevate us and finally give us into that, you know, same level of technology? But
because they were so behind for so long.
Yeah, so I'm really impressed, Jared. Like, I like this powertrain a lot. I think it's exactly what this car needed. I mean, obviously, I love a V8, but with these two turbos, that, you know, quick shifting 9-speed, this thing feels a lot more nimble. Does it feel like an Infiniti FX or G from back in the day? No.
That's a little bit of a stretch.
It's a little bit of a stretch, but you know what? I would be curious to see if Infiniti would do like a red sport version of this. They actually said that a sportier version, a sport variant was coming.
Yeah, they mentioned a sport edition. We don't know what that is. We'll try and ask questions a little bit later and maybe put it into the video somewhere, but I am curious too to see what they meant by that.
Yeah, I'm curious as well, because I think that there's definitely room for it. I mean, this Autograph that we're driving now is over $110,000. It's the most expensive version you can get. But I mean, I think in this particular class of vehicle, there's always room for more trims, more like variants, more, you know, customization, because that's what people kind of expect. Now, I also want to briefly mention the fuel efficiency of this car. Now, we've only been driving it on a pretty short loop. It's a pre-production car. It's been driven around by, you know, lead-footed journalists in terms of, so I can't really comment on what I'm getting in real-world fuel economy, but it's rated at 1519 mpg. Now that number doesn't sound all that impressive because the old V8 powered model was 1319. So really you only have a 2 mpg improvement in the city. You have a 2 mpg improvement in the combined rating, so we have around a 24-gallon fuel tank. Theoretically, you should be able to do around 400 miles of range. It's showing 361 now, just below or just above 3/4 of a tank. Now that it is recommended to run on premium. They did inform us that you can use regular on this car, but they did not say what the horsepower figure would drop to.
I think because if they did, then we would know what the new Armada is going to produce, which is why they won't tell us.
Probably, yeah. So I think that's definitely that's a good little guess. But let's see here. What is the trip computer actually saying? It's saying actually 18.
That's 18. Really good.
That is actually pretty decent. So
We've been flooring it.
We have been. We have not been very kind to this car. So
wow.
18 is actually not bad.
You couldn't get 18 in the old one if you tried.
No, no. I had one for a week about 7 or 4 months ago, and I was like, man, this V8, she's thirsty. So
12 or 13. So although the highway fuel economy, it's just hard to like improve that unless you have like a diesel or something. So to have the city fuel economy improvement, I think owners are really going to like that.
Yeah, I appreciate that a lot. And then the other thing we're driving, we're also driving around in the first Infiniti that has their ProPilot 2.1. Now, I'm actually going to cue over to some footage because we were out on the highway earlier and I was actually getting the system to work. So we'll go ahead and cut to that and see how it works out on the highway. So with this all-new QX80, Infiniti is also talking about the fact that this is the first vehicle to get their latest full hands-off driver assistance. So it's hands-off, but eyes-on. And as you can see, Jared and I have found this interstate. I don't know what interstate we're on, but we have the ProPilot 2.1 activated, and basically the 0.1 means that it has better lane keep and lane change ability. So right now there's a slow Ford Escape in front of me, Jared. I just have to hit this button right here. It tells me to put my hands back on the wheel. It turned on the signal, and it's switching lanes, but I have to keep my hands on the wheel, which is not the same as Super Cruise. You've tried the Super Cruise system before, haven't you?
That'll do the lane change fully without putting your hands back on. So it's not a full hands-off lane change. And now the highway's about to end. Will it detect that?
I don't trust it, so I'm gonna hit the brake and I'm gonna slow down because I never trust a system when the traffic in front of you is like slowed down. It usually will know when you're like following traffic, but if it just comes to an abrupt stop, I never trust it. So the one thing I remember about the Cadillac or the GM Super Cruise system is it basically will just initiate the lane change automatically, check for traffic and change lanes, and you just sit there. So this system requires you to hit a button, keep your hands on the wheel, and it will activate the lane change. But earlier we were driving it with on the highway at like 70 miles an hour, and it was doing a pretty good job at keeping in the lanes. But it's nice that Infiniti has the system, but I do think there's kind of room for improvement because of how the competitors have moved on a little bit.
Right.
So obviously the Pro Pilot Assist 2.1, while it is definitely caught up to most of the competitors, I personally, and I think you would agree, Jared, it's not quite as good as what you find in Super Cruise or even Lincoln's Blue Cruise, which, what did they used to call it again?
Active Glide.
Active Glide.
It's new, it could get a little better and it'll software update.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that Infiniti does offer a hands-free system because we're still waiting for Toyota and Lexus to eventually give us a version of their teammate system, which I haven't had a chance to drive yet in like almost 2 years.
It's been a long time.
Since we first drove it. But overall, I'm impressed with the way the QX80 drives. I mean, they keep talking about how this vehicle is like a renaissance for a rebirth of Infiniti, and it definitely gets me excited to see, you know, what their future product is going to look like in the next coming years.
Me too.
So with just under 13,000 units sold in America last year, the QX80, while it isn't necessarily the best-selling vehicle in the segment, still represented a pretty strong number for Infiniti as a brand. Now, if you keep in mind of one of its main Japanese rivals, the Lexus LX, the QX80, the old one, the current one, actually outsold the Lexus by about 2 to 1. Now, obviously, the best seller in this segment is the Cadillac Escalade, with Cadillac moving around 41,000 units last year. So I have to say, after spending the day driving and just spending some time with the all-new version of the QX80, it's pretty easy to see that Infiniti has really pulled out all the stops here. They want to begin a huge product renaissance, and it's going to start, of course, with this vehicle. As you guys see, the design, while it is kind of an evolution of terms of the previous generation, I still think this is one incredibly handsome vehicle. As you guys saw, the interior is just where it's been hugely upgraded, especially in terms of technology, in terms of luxury. It has really comfortable seats in all 3 rows. It has plenty of space for full-size adults and space to actually carry all their things. Well, most of the things. I would love to see Infiniti do an extended wheelbase version to give us even more cargo space. And then the technology in this car is just finally up to par with the rest of the segment. I love the twin 14.3-inch displays. I love the different camera views. I love the heated and ventilated seats and with massage in both the front and the second row. Now, of course, you have to go for the autograph trim to get all of that. In terms of the powertrain and the driving dynamics, this is really where the Infiniti team, really knocked it out of the park in terms of driving. I mean, obviously, this is still a body-on-frame vehicle, but it drives a lot smaller than it is. It has a wonderful sounding and performing twin-turbo V6 with a smooth shifting 9-speed auto. And while the 0 to 60 time was slower versus the last V8 version that I tested a few months ago, I'll have to wait until I get one back home to actually retest that. I'm also expecting the fuel economy of this model to be considerably better in real-world testing because, as you guys saw, in our short drive here in Napa, this car was averaging around 18 mpg, which is actually a pretty good number. It's right on par with a lot of its competitors. If you want better mpg in this class, you're going to be looking at the hybrid-powered Toyota Sequoia or the diesel-powered, versions of the Escalade or the Yukon or the Chevrolet Tahoe, which again, this is more of a luxury-oriented model. Now, this is where things also get a little tricky when it comes to pricing for the QX80, because if you're looking to get your hands on this vehicle, Infiniti says they should be arriving at your local Infiniti dealership by the end of July, so you're gonna have to wait about a month, but they are heading to dealerships very soon. This vehicle is still going to be built in Japan because, remember, it's still built off of the Nissan Patrol architecture, and which is why we're gonna probably see a new version of the Armada very soon. And of course, with all this new technology and luxury, and stiffer platform and safety features, this vehicle has gotten considerably more expensive. The old QX80 was among the value leaders in the segment. That's no longer the case. This is now priced pretty much the same as the Cadillac and around the same as like the Lexus, for example. The QX80 in the pure trim with rear-wheel drive will start at around $82,500. That's around an $8,500 price increase versus the previous generation. Although I have to say, with all the additional features, it probably is going to be worth the extra cost. Now, if you guys want four-wheel drive, it's going to be around a $3,100 option, optional on the pure and the luxury trim. It's standard on the Sensory and the Autograph trim. The luxury trim is around $7,000 more, starting at just over $89,000, which is actually around the same price as the old Sensory trim from the previous generation or the current gen. But I will say that the amount of features that the luxury has almost basically matches that of the previous generation Sensory. So if you're looking to trade in your old QX80, you could probably be happy with just the luxury trim, and it's around the same price. Now, if you want to go to the two top trims, which Infiniti is saying the two top trims are going to make up about 50% of the sales mix, the Sensory trim is going to start at just over $100,000. That's what's going to roll in the massaging seats in the front seat. And if you want the Autograph trim, like this one here with everything, that's going to give you the heated and cooled seats in the second row with the massage feature, the cool box feature, the upgraded Klipsch audio system. This car here is going to start at $110,595. With destination, this vehicle is around $112,590. I know $112,000 basically makes this car as expensive as the Cadillac Escalade and as expensive as like a Lexus LX. A GMC Yukon Denali Ultimate is going to be also around $100,000, so it'll kind of compare favorably with the Sensory trim. And while those of you who are trading in your old QX80 may not like the fact that this car has gotten a lot more expensive, I think what Infiniti has done here is finally delivered a vehicle that really can show show consumers and other manufacturers that Infiniti is here to stay, and they're going to be introducing a lot of new products in the next coming years. And it should really bring this brand back to the same kind of level that it was at back in the early 2000 era. But with all that said, hope you guys have enjoyed my full overview on the brand new 2025 Infiniti QX80 and this autograph trim. If you're also looking to see the latest cars I'm testing, be sure to follow me on Instagram at redline_reviews, like us on Facebook, and as always guys, please keep subscribing to the Redline Reviews YouTube channel for all the latest reviews. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you all in the next video.